Hello friends, welcome to Pune International Center. I am Abhay Vaidya, Director PIC. PIC Adda is a monthly program where our members have a close interaction with an eminent speaker on the topic under discussion. This session is moderated by Dr. Sangeeta Kale, who will join us a little later. We have had many distinguished speakers in the past, such as Mr. T.R. Dungaji, a very senior member of the Tata Group who spoke on Jamshedji Tata, Dr. G. Raghavan, Director, School of Quantum Technology, DIAT, and very recently, Dr. Shefali Vaidya, who spoke on the history of Indian textiles. We are honored to have with us today a very distinguished founding member of Pune International Center, Professor Satish Devdar, Professor of Economics at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, where he chairs the Food and Agribusiness Management Program. He will be speaking to us on the relevance of gold in India from ancient times to modern economic policy. Professor Devdar has a bachelor's and a master's in economics from the Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics and a PhD in agricultural economics from the Ohio State University. He has worked on imperfectly competitive market structures, World Trade Organization, agricultural trade, food quality and safety, and CSR issues. He has also conducted research projects for the Ministries of Food Processing, Agriculture, and the US Department of Agriculture. Professor Devdar has a number of honors to his credit, and these include the Distinguished Young Professor Award for Excellence in Research by IIMA, Devang Mehta National Education Award for Best Professor of Economics, and during 2006-2008, he was selected as the Hewlett Fellow of the International Agricultural Trade Research Consortium. An accomplished author, one of his books, Day-to-Day Economics, was a national bestseller. Interestingly, Professor Devdar was instrumental in bringing out the commemorative postage stamp on the 18th century Maratha statesman Bajirao Peshwa. I would now like to say a few words about Pune International Center. This is a think tank which works in the areas of national security, social innovation, energy, environment and climate change, science, technology, innovation and national growth, and urbanization and governance. Our recent publication is this book, Rising to the China Challenge, Winning Through Strategic Patience and Economic Growth, authored by 6 eminent members of the PIC. You are welcome to visit our website, puneinternationalcenter.org, for more details on our activities and events. Before I hand over the floor to Professor Devdar, I would like to mention that this program has a Q&A segment, and you are welcome to post your questions in the question box. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for that kind introduction. Before I begin, let me just share my screen so that I can show my PPT. Okay, great. So thanks, thanks for giving me this opportunity. Why I'm talking about the role of gold in India, I think it's the curiosity. And that curiosity again came to me a few months ago. I was in Pune and I was coming down the hill from Symbiosis Road and I saw a big advertisement, a huge hoarding. I think, was it Vamanari Pete or it was Pune Gadgil? And it said Mangal Sutra Mahotsav. I said, my God, women in Pune have become very liberal now. But then, that got me started. I said, we have so much fascination for gold. And just about at that time, I also got a news that the British Royal Mint has come out with a 20-gram gold coin, a gold bar, and which depicts the Lakshmi. And it was selling for some £1,000. And so I thought, there's something special about gold, and that got me started. So what I'll do is the following. A bit of motivation why we are doing this. I'll talk about sacredness of gold in India, then about ancient gold jewelry, its importance, about production and supply of gold in ancient India, how gold was minted in ancient India, and how over time, over centuries or for millennia, how the stock has accumulated, but production has substantially gone down. And that has implications, therefore, for the modern economy. And I link that to in the modern economic terminology as to how do you save? Is gold buying, saving, or hoarding? And that links to the GDP in some sense. So therefore, should we be recycling the idle gold stock? Because idle gold stock is basically hoarding, it's not contributing to the economic growth of the country. And how do you therefore channel gold into the financial markets? And I just end with a prospect, a postscript, that I hope there's a scope for a world's largest gold museum in India. So that's just as an aside, but this is what I'll also share. So this is the basic synopsis, what I want to do in this 45 minutes. So let's look at motivation part. Last year, November 2021, as I said, Royal Mint of UK came up with a Lakshmi gold bar, which was being sold at £1,000 a piece, a 20-gram bar. And it became very popular in UK. So, if you really look at why it is so, right? In India, the household stock of gold is about 23,500 tons, and it's valued $1.5 trillion. Over millennia, we have accumulated gold. So that's the stock of gold we are talking about. Temples hold about 4,000 tons of gold. And I'm sure you have heard of stories coming in newspapers about Padmanabha Swami Temple and many others. I'm sure Mumbai's Siddhivinayak is also in competition. It also has a lot of gold, right? And the official reserves of RBI are about 745 tons. It goes up and down a little bit, but that's also a large number. In fact, after US has some 8,000 tons of gold as official reserves. After US, it's basically Germany, India, and a few other countries. So we are quite up there. So unfortunately, however, currently there is no domestic production. Almost everything is imported. We had Kolar gold mine. I'm sure all of us know the Kolar gold mine. We studied in our geography books, probably in high schools, but it doesn't produce any gold anymore. And by the time it was closed in 1950s, more than 1,000 tons of gold was extracted by the British company, Taylor and Company, and it was taken out of India. So, and now nothing is left, right? So today, we are importing about 900 tons of gold per year, which constitutes almost about 9% of our imports. 2.54 trillion rupees worth gold is imported. And if you say 9% of imports, it means that it's contributing much more than the trade deficit. If at all, let's say our trade deficit or current account deficit is about 5% of GDP. So that means gold imports are contributing substantially to it. So therefore, can we do something about it? Can we look at gold? Is there a possibility for us to reduce the imports of gold? Is gold, a productive asset, right? And how can we therefore rechannel the gold? So that's the idea with which I'm making this presentation, right? So let's look at the fascination for gold. It's geography, history, science, economics, and culture. Why should we all do this? One philosopher has said that science without history is like a man without memory. If you don't have memory, you don't exist like a human being. I mean, what of you, right? If you don't have memory. And therefore, science also, we learn a lot of things from looking at the history. And therefore, I'm looking at this gold history particularly. And, certainly for a country who has had an existence of more than 5,000 years, we are not a small country. We are a country of continental proportions. And therefore, looking at gold history is extremely important, and which we can relate to the modern times as well. So, sacredness of gold. I can go all the way back to Rig Veda. The first words from Rig Veda, and I think those will be the first words that were revealed to our rishis also. Agni Mele Purohitam. That's how the Rig Veda first two words start. And there is Hiranyagarbha Sukta in Rig Veda, which talks about, and as many of you would know, that in Hinduism, the concept is that there is no beginning and no end to the world, right? There was no God to start with. And it's not that God has created the world. There was no beginning for the world. There is no end to the world. But apparently, the Hiranyagarbha Sukta talks about a golden egg or a golden seed, and which represents the primordial energy. And there has been a big bang of this energy from this seed, and there the whole world has come up. Even the god has emerged from this Hiranyagarbha. That's the idea, right? Shri Sukta, another hymn from Rigveda, talks about goddess Lakshmi, which is represents prosperity and beauty, and she has always shown shining with golden hue and garlands. So this is Rigveda for you, where first mention of gold is there, and the importance of gold is that it is at the basis of the creation of this universe. So that's the sanctity we have attached to it, and that's also true in Buddhist and Jain literature also. Jataka stories, which are the Buddhist stories, but the stories actually, though they are written after 600 BC, they are talking about life of Indians prior to 600 BC. And there they talk about Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, who drives away Kalakini, the goddess of misfortune. So even in Buddhist literature, you find Lakshmi, and it appears both in Buddhist and Jain temples also. In Jain temples, you will find the sculptures of goddess Lakshmi. And the images and association with Lakshmi really started on the temples, apparently from 3rd century BCE. You must have seen the sculpture showing Varada Mudra. If you put your hand something like this, the Varada Mudra represents Lakshmi, and where gold will be flowing from her. So this is typically the Varada Mudra. Right, this is the basically royal mint bar that they minted last year during Diwali. So this hand basically shows the Varada Mudra, and from her hand, gold coins are being dropped, right? So that's what the Varada Mudra stands for. And there is a mention of Ashtalakshmi. There are 8 forms of Lakshmi in India, described in Puranas. There is grains, livestock, and many other things are described as Lakshmi. And one of them, of course, is Dhanlakshmi, which is represented by gold and money, right? And all of us know that it's a special day for us in Diwali, Lakshmi Pujan, all that. So that's the sacredness of gold. So that's going back more than 5,000 years. It starts right from the beginning when the Rigvedas were written, right? All the Vedas were written. Let me give you, in bold relief, how we value gold much more than any other country, historically. Please look at this picture. Some of you might be able to recall who this might be, and compare this to this picture, right? Now, both of them are kings. The one on the right is king of the Greek god Zeus, and he has no jewelry on him, right? And look at the one on the left. That's Indra for you, riding an elephant, Airavat. And Indra has headgear, bracelets, necklace, waistbands, anklets. Even his Airavat has jewelry, right? So make this comparison itself tells you a story that how much we value gold. In Greek literature, I mean, many of other statues also, if you see, they are focusing more on the carnal body, right? And we are focusing more on the other aspects, right, of the jewelry part of it, right? So that's where it comes. And that comes out through many of Indian literature. Here are some examples. Now, Hiranyamani, that's the gift of gold of studded ornament. That's description you find in Rigveda. Vajrasenayi Samhita, Atharvaveda, Shatapada Brahmana, everywhere you find mention of gold. In Rupa Sutra, women were expected to sing songs wearing gold ornaments. In Arthashastra, Kautilya's Arthashastra, there is detailed description of production of gold, and it is managed by a superintendent of gold called Suvarnadaksha, and there is a royal goldsmith as well, that is Suvarnika, and this is Arthashastra is basically 4th century BCE, right? If you look at some of the literary espousals, Bhartrihari is Niti Shatak, right? Bhartrihari is saying, Sarve Gunaha Kanchanam Ashrayante. All virtues of a person take shelter in gold. So look at, again, so much importance we are attaching to gold. In Atharvaveda, and there is another reference that one who dies of old age becomes what he wears. If it is gold, one will get splendor, strength, and brilliance of gold. Again, I need not emphasize the importance of gold. We have attached not just from religious perspective, but from jewelry perspective and the its connection to the next word. Now excuse me. Let me come to the production and supply of gold from ancient times till today. There are 4 forms of production of gold that are mentioned in our literature. One is called placer gold. That is panning of gold dust from alluvial placer gold deposits in river beds. And in Rigveda, there is mention of river Sindhu and placer gold being found in the river bed, and therefore that gold and that river was Sindhu was called Hiranyai, or giver of gold. Right? And then there are references to Manas Sarovar and Thogjalyong. These are gold deposits at the source of Sindhu river, and gold that was also found in the Gangetic plains, in the alluvial soils, and it was called as Gangeya. So gold was plentifully apparently available in the river beds in India. That was the placer gold for you. Then there was what is called as Pipilika gold or ant gold. Why it is called ant gold? It is extracted by panning the auriferous soil of the ant and termite hills. So you have ant and termite hills, you take the soils of those termite hills and you put water in it and you start panning it and you use to get gold. And this was a powdery form of gold. You find this reference in Mahabharata. When Yudhishthira is anointed as a king, the priest and others are showering gold on him. It's not the gold nuggets being showered on him, but it's a powdery form of gold, which is and it is called as a Pipilika gold. The third form is what is called as a liquid dissolved gold. Now, Kautilya makes good reference to this. He talks about natural liquid dissolved gold, which is available in mountain rocks and crevices, right? And Kalidas, again come to the 4th century Common Era. Playwright Kalidasa is talking about liquid form of gold as Kanakarasa. Then there is a Gandharva Sutra treatise, which also refers to Hataka Prabhasa, which is also basically liquid dissolved gold. And the 4th one, of course, is the one what we would understand, gold extracted from smelting of ore, gold ore, right? So Shatapada Brahmana has reference to it, that how to smelt gold ore to get gold. Kautilya also gives a detailed extraction process, how you get it from the gold ore, called as Suvarna Dhatav. And he had appointed director of mines, Akara Dhyaksha, who should be expert in smelting and metallurgy. And he gives assaying test. In Kautilya's Arthashastra, he makes mention of 2 regions, Kalinga and Tapi river area, where you get the best of the touchstones to find the purity of gold. So history of gold is too long for us, and that's one of the reasons why we still value gold so much. Now, when we talk about minting of gold coins, that also again goes back. It's not just available of, it's not just about we hearing it in our religious literature or secular literature, or just about talking about gold jewelry. We talked about, we had technology of minting gold coins as well. Vedic literature again talks about different kinds of gold coins. Gold was the first metal that was used as coins and as a medium of exchange, right? Unstamped bullion, or what is called as a button gold, was called Hiranyapinda in Vedic literature. And there was stamped and punchmarked coins, and they were called as Mishka or Satamana or Krishnala. Krishnala was the lowest division. So it's like saying Paisa and Rupee. So Krishnala was the lowest denomination, and Nishka was like, if Nishka is like a Rupee, then Krishnala was like a Paisa. And Satamana was somewhere in between. It's like saying 4 anna or half anna, that kind of stuff. Coin making was known to Indians even prior to 7th century BC, and that's even before the Greeks got to know about this. And there are scientific references to this. Delmar and Bhandarkar both quote that the Indians knew how to make gold coins even before 700 BCE. Now, mint mastery was a profession well known in India at that time. There is a story about a boy called Upali. And this is in Mahavagga. This is the Buddhist treatise, 4th century BC. And there the author is talking about giving a story about Upali. And his parents are worried that what Upali should do. So the problem of parent worried about their children, what they are going to do next, is age old. It is millennia old. And parents of Upali are wondering, what should he do? He does nothing. Should he ask him to become a monk? Should he just become a writer? Or should he become a mint master? So a profession like a mint master was very well known in 4th century BC in India. So imagine the kind of advancement which we had at that time. Right? Kautilya also refers to Lakshanabhyaksha, that is mint master, and Rupadarshaka, who is the coin examiner. Right? And Kautilya gives heavy penalty for circulating counterfeit coins. And there is a death penalty he assigns for depositing counterfeit gold coins into the treasury, right? So up until Kautilya's time, gold was being used as coin. There was ample supply of gold at that time, and it was used as medium of exchange, right? But from Kautilya onwards, looks like gold coins stopped being used as currency, and we'll see that a little later. If you look at another example, Hathi Gumpha in current day Orissa, King Kharavela, who became the king after post Ashoka, basically. But after the Kalinga war, Ashoka's empire had expanded. But after that, we don't hear what happened afterwards. And Kharavela regained all this territory, and he became an emperor once again in Kalinga. There are references that King Kharavela was trained in Rupa Sutra, and Rupa Sutra means minting of coins, or basically coining of gold coins. Right? So he was very much trained in that. Right? So there was a science. It was an art. It was a science well known to Indians, for millennia, even before Common Era also. Now there have been quite a few treatises on coinage. No, there is a Buddhist monk called Buddha Ghosha. He wrote a treatise called Rupa Sutra. Buddha Ghosha is the same one who wrote Buddha Charitam, right? So he's the same guy. And Buddha Ghosha had gone to Sri Lanka, to propagate Buddhism. And he wrote that treatise in Sri Lanka, but he talks about the treatise Rupa Sutra. So, this was a scientific way of making gold coins. And he talks about 4 different kinds of gold coins. One was Chaturasra, which is rectangular. Then there was a Parimandala, which is a circular one. Then there's a Dirgha, which was elongated. And then there was Chitra Vichitra, which is basically irregular form of the coin. You come back into the modern century, let's say first millennia AD, right? Thakkar Feru, he was a person from Delhi, a jeweler from Delhi, and he wrote Dravya Pariksha in 1318 Common Era, and he calls gold coins known as Sita Rani at that time. Right? Let's look at therefore, what happened to the supply of gold over time. Right? We talked about the sacredness associated with gold. We talked about the jewelry fascination for gold. We talked about its production and the technology part of it. Let's look at the demand and supply of it over time. Huge stocks were there in India. As we say today, there is some close to 25,000 tons of gold in India, which has been accumulated not over centuries, over millennia. Right? And this comes out through writings of Westerners also. In the 1st century Common Era, Pliny the Elder, he was the advisor to the Roman emperor, Augustus, I think. I don't remember the name, but Pliny the Elder was advisor to the Roman emperor. And he was saying that, we are draining Rome's gold to India because we are importing textiles, silk, camphor, spices, and even iron. By the way, many of you may not know that iron, the Woods iron, those who are metallurgists and would know for sure, Woods iron was first made in India, thousands of years ago, and that was exported to the rest of the world. And even in the Arabian Nights, this is about 8th century AD, there are references to the princess, the Arab princess saying that give me the Indian sword, Hind sword. That's what she's saying. So all these exports were going, but the specie flow was coming back to India. It was in the form of gold. So not only plenty of gold was available in India traditionally, we are also getting gold because we had a trade surplus with the rest of the world. And Pliny the Elder is worried. He's saying that what are we doing? Our gold is going to India because we are importing everything from India. Same story by 16th century. Martin Luther is the Christian reformer, and he was very upset. He says that we are making conspicuous consumption of fine silk and muslin from India, and what are we doing? We are draining our gold to India. Same story. So he put restrictions. He said there should be restrictions on import of goods and services from India because we are losing our gold, right? So that means basically it is not just production of gold and use within India. We are getting gold from outside as well, right? Sangam Text. Sangam Text is basically Tamil literature. In Tamil literature, there are references to Yavana ships. Yavana meaning basically Greeks and Romans. Yavana ships returning with pepper and Muziris meaning Kerala coast, some region in Kerala coast, and Muziris would resound with gold coins, right? So that's the that tradition continued. We have gold coins minted by Guptas, a large stock of gold coins. We have the Gupta period from 4th century, almost 3rd century AD to 6th century AD was the golden age of India. And both figuratively and literally, a lot of gold coins were minted by the Gupta emperors, and generally you will find Lakshmi engraved on them. Then Ram Tanka was common in the 12th century. Vigraha Raja was the king at that time. He had minted Ram Tanka, and then Sher Shah Suri, he minted gold moher. From there onwards, you know the story of India. I mean, then we had so many foreigners coming to India, invaders, and that what I have mentioned here also. 17 raids by Mahmud of Ghazni did not happen for any other reason but to get gold from India, right? Nadir Shah takes the golden peacock throne, right? So this continued. In fact, if you read Ambedkar's collected works, published recently, reprint in 2019. He talks about, I have just quoted his sentence from Ambedkar, greed of gold, whetted by the presence of Indian goods in Greece, was the object of Alexander's expedition to India. Otherwise, one still wonders why Alexander came to India. I have no clue why he's called Alexander the Great. If you call somebody a great, why should we call somebody a person great? For some whims and fancies of getting gold from India, he conquers Iran, he conquers Afghanistan, the then part of India. He comes all the way up to Sindhu River, wades through Sindhu River and goes back because he's too threatened by the great Magadha Empire, and therefore he doesn't go any further, right? So I don't know why should we call him great, but Alexander's idea was to come to India, take gold, and Ambedkar is quoting that, right? So we had production, lot of production, lot of specie flow from rest of the world to India, and we kept accumulating gold, right? So it was a good medium of exchange then, but post Kautilya or Kautilya onwards, gold ceased to be a medium of exchange, right? Therefore, Kautilya does not mention gold coins. He talks about gold jewelry, he talks about production of gold, but he's not talking about making gold coins, right? He only talks about silver coins, which are called Karshapana, and copper coins. In fact, in my opinion, the history's first example of quantitative easing or expansion of money supply has occurred during the Mauryan period. You will know the story of Kautilya, right? I mean, he got insulted by the Magadha king by Mahananda. So he left from there, he went to Takshashila. On his way, he picked up a boy from a pastoral family. He thought he was bright and he took him to Takshashila. At Takshashila, he gave him education to that boy, and who later became Chandragupta Maurya basically. After his education in Takshashila, both of them came back. They wanted to come back to Magadha, to Patliputra. and dethrone Mahananda and get the empire for themselves. But how should you finance your war efforts? There are clear references in Mahavagga, the same treatise, the Buddhist treatise, and in Mahavagga there is a reference that Kautilya knew how to melt ores and how to make coins, and what he did was he had copper coins and he plated copper coins with existing silver coins, and only gave the plating to the copper coins and increased money supply from 1 crore Karshapanas to 8 crore Karshapanas. So there was an 8-time increase in money supply, which he used to finance the war. So this is the deficit financing for a war. I think this is the world's first example or written example that we can see. Right? Anyway, so then comes silver rupiah of Sher Shah Suri. Why? He had a gold mohur to start with, right? Sher Shah came with a gold mohur, but increasingly, although the stock of gold was very high, the production of gold was very low in India, and therefore people started moving to silver. And this is what I'm showing here in the Vedic period. And this is all recorded information I'm giving you. If somebody is interested, I'll send my paper on this also. So in Vedic period, price of 1 silver was 1 gold. Later on, by Chandragupta Maurya's time, it became 2 silver to 1 gold. Gupta period, 5th century CE, it became 6 silvers to 1 gold. And today it's about 70 silver coins to 1 gold. So that's the ratio. So relatively speaking, gold has become much, much scarce in India compared to the demand, right? So that is what has happened. And therefore, even Sher Shah Suri had to move from gold mohur to silver rupiah, right? And as many of you would know that why it is called rupiah. Rupiah means, the word rupiah means silver, right? In Sanskrit, that is how the word rupiah has come. It's no wonder, therefore, that from Mauritius to Maldives, Seychelles to Sri Lanka, India to Indonesia, and Nepal and Pakistan, the rupee is the official name in their currency. It's Mauritius also has rupee word in their currency. So is Maldives, so is Seychelles, of course, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Indonesia. So that's the context of that gold mohur turning into silver rupiah. All right, so let me just therefore take little stock of things, and then we come to the current present context. So there is obsession for gold for India today also, and you know why that is there, right? There is really a sacredness associated with it. There is fondness for jewelry, and it's a store of value today, right? Those who are that some economics would understand the concept what we call as price elasticity of demand. So for gold, the price elasticity of demand in the short run is minus 1.2, and in the long run is minus 0.4. What it means is, in the short run, you are much more responsive to changes in demand than in the long run. For example, if there is a consumer durable like washing machine, right? If price of washing machine goes up, immediately demand goes down. Because when you buy a washing machine, actually you are purchasing services for the next probably 8 years, 7 years, or 10 years, right? So therefore you immediately hold back. But if you're buying just an ordinary commodity, you buy only for that moment. And therefore you still may buy it because you're habituated to it, right? So for consumer durables, price elasticity of demand is very high, and that is what has come out true. Typical elasticity is very high for consumer durables, and which is very high for gold. So gold has become a consumer durable in India, or store of value. That function has attached more value than anything else now, right? And that is coming at a cost to us. As I started by saying in the very first slide, stock of gold is very high, but the flow of gold is very less, right? Therefore, we are importing more than 2.5 trillion rupees of gold every year. It amounts to 9% of our imports, right? And 900 tons imported every year, right? And there is no industrial use to it also. In electronics, the cell phone that we use has some tiny amount of gold in it, right? So whether it's electronics, photocell panels, satellites, you need gold today. And therefore that demand is also growing in world over, including in India, right? And if Make in India story succeeds and we start making a lot more electronics and photocells and mobiles and whatnot, and we are sending satellite, demand for gold is further going to go up, right? Where will this, what do we do now, right? I mean, will we keep importing it? This is a more major concern for a couple of reasons. One, of course, is that we are importing a lot of gold. So our trade deficit is because of gold, right? That's one story. The second story is whatever gold we buy, it is not saving at the household level. It is called hoarding. What's the difference between the two? If you look at gold stock, it is why it is hoarding and not saving. India's saving rate is about 30% of GDP. That means at a household level, you can just, if you bring it down to household level, out of 100 rupees, 30 rupees are saved, let's say, by an Indian household, right? Out of that savings of 30%, household saving rate is about only 18%, rest is by corporates. Of the household savings, financial savings is only 7%. What does that mean? That means you may buy land, you may buy property, you may buy other things. And also 11% of household saving of that is in the form of gold. Now, when you buy gold, economists will call that as a hoarding and not as saving. What is the reason? The reason being that let's say I save money out of 100 rupees, I was saving 30 rupees, right? And that saving I was putting in let's say I was putting in a bank account, or I was putting it in mutual fund, or I was putting it in the post office deposit. What's happening is I'm putting my extra cash, I'm parking in the financial market, either bank or post office or mutual funds or shares and debentures. That means my excess supply of savings becomes available to the producers. They can therefore invest, and therefore more goods and services will be produced. But when I buy gold, I'm not making my savings available in the financial market, and therefore firms are unable to use my savings for more productive investments, right? In that sense, buying gold is hoarding and it's not saving as such, right? Why is this happening? It's happening in India. Probably one more reason is it's a hedge against inflation. If you look at the last 40 years, 4 decades, the average inflation rate in India has been 6%. But the average annualized return on gold is 9.6%. Naturally, therefore, you end up buying gold as a hedge against inflation. That's one more reason. So now we are adding more reasons to buy gold, right? We are saying that it's really a sacredness is there, jewelry is there, a store of value is there. Why store of value? The real reason is that inflation is outpacing. We are trying to outpace inflation by buying gold because that value is increasing on an average at a higher rate in the long run, right? And in the Indian households, we keep gold in the long run. It just stays there with us, right? For the rainy day. So what we call this is happening as a leakage from the circular flow. We are buying a lot of gold, 900 tons of gold every year. It's in trillions of rupees we are buying. And when we buy it, it's a leakage from the circular flow. That means we are not making our savings available to the financial sector domestically to invest more, and therefore more production of cars and name any production item, right? So standard of living therefore cannot go up, right? So therefore we have to be worried about this. So therefore, how should we recycle the idle gold? If we are importing 900 tons of gold every year, if there's a huge demand for gold, it is also true that we have a huge stock of gold. It's lying idle. It is hoarding. So why not recycle that gold, right? Let's say there are 10 items, gold items in a typical household, right? Of those 10 items, 1 or 2 are regularly used. Maybe until there is a gold ring that is being used. Maybe Mangal Sutra is used. Rest, maybe 2 more are used on festive occasions. Take away not 2, 3, but out of 10, maybe 5 therefore are used, but 5 are just staying unused. They are hoarded. They are just not being used for any productive purpose. Is there a possibility therefore that those 5 items can be recycled? You own them, but somehow you recycling the society so that we don't import gold, and then our import bill goes down and trade deficit will go down. So is there a possibility for that? With that motive, gold monetization scheme was brought in, right? This was in 2015-16, and banks were allowed to receive gold deposits, and banks would give a modest interest on it. So let's say 2% or 2.5% on it, right? But this scheme did not succeed. Only 11 tons of gold was collected by 2018, which is nothing. Only 10 banks participated in it. It makes sense that somehow the previous governments did not popularize GMS scheme or the gold monetization scheme. So how should we popularize this gold monetization scheme? One possibility is that some of you may be aware that RBI has something called as cash reserve requirement, CRR. That means whenever I deposit 100 rupees in bank, RBI makes it mandatory that out of that at least 5 to 6 rupees out of 100 rupees should be kept aside as cash reserve, right? So that banks don't collapse, right? So one suggestion would be that make gold deposits also count for the cash reserve requirement, because gold is liquid. If required, banks can also sell that gold, right? So therefore, CRR could be included. Gold can be included in CRR instead of just keeping cash as aside, right? That would mean that banks will be willing to accept gold deposits from consumers and use it for their maintenance of CRR. Second, it is you'll be surprised probably, or may not be surprised. Rural India, 60% of gold purchases happen in rural India, and we have never tapped that market. So banks never went to regional rural banks. Other banks never went to rural areas. So therefore, we could allow smaller gold deposits. So there could be a discretization of the deposits. Even if you have not just 1 gram, even if you have, let's say, 1,000 rupee worth or 100 rupee worth gold, if a deposit can be opened, probably rural India will contribute more gold in the gold monetization scheme, right? And for that, you can have something like Jan Dhan type Yojana. And Jan Dhan account was a great success in India. There was a hesitance for farmers and rural folks to open bank account, because they'll say, I just do barter transaction or I just use cash. Why should I have a bank account? And you need KYC and this and that, and I don't have enough money. Why should I open a bank account, right? What Prime Minister of India did was that you can open bank account even if you have a zero balance. Now, when direct cash transfers are happening to farmers, now they have a bank account where the money is directly transferred, right? That's a big advantage for them now, right? Similarly, there could be on the lines of Jan Dhan account, there could be gold deposit accounts which can be opened without any starting amount of gold in it, right? So that will probably help people putting gold in the gold deposits, right? And we can call jewelers also for creating these accounts. Another source would be we could access gold loan network of banks. In South particularly, and in the North it is not that popular, but particularly very popular in the South India and to some extent in Western India, gold loans are very popular, right? So there is a loan market for more than 3,000 crores for gold loans. If that is true, then there will be a two-way synergy. Whichever banks are giving gold loans can be encouraged to have GMS accounts, right? Or those banks which have GMS accounts can be incentivized to give gold loans. As a result, whatever gold loan is given, whenever people give gold as a deposit to the bank against as a collateral for getting loan, once the loan is repaid, they have confidence in the bank that gold can be gold can be deposited in the bank itself, and you will have bank deposits, right? So I think that synergy can be developed. Moreover, I think enough marketing of the gold monetization scheme has not happened. Now, as I said, out of 10 items, I know there's a fetish for gold. 1 or 2 items we'll use regularly. Another 1 or 2 items we'll use on festive occasions. Another one of, at least there will be some gold items which can be put in gold deposit bonds or a gold monetization scheme, right? So how do we then market this idea? It gives you about 2.5% interest, right? So if you just keep it at home, you're losing 2.5% interest. Plus, you're also saving on locker charges. I remember a friend of mine, wife of my friend, when I was in Pune, she was telling my friend that I'll say a thing in Marathi. Most of you understand Marathi. He said, "Laukar pahiye, laukar pahiye." He said, "What do you want more? Quickly, laukar." She was saying, "I want locker, not laukar." So basically, we have so much gold inventory at home that you want lockers, and then banks will charge you, locker charges. You are saving on that as well. You are getting interest on it. Plus, of course, there's a safety angle to it. Moreover, if you have a gold monetization account, and if your gold appreciates, there will be no capital gains tax. There will be no wealth tax, and there will be no income tax on the interest that you earn. So the gold that goes into gold monetization scheme, there is no interest payment tax on interest. There is no tax on its valuation, that is wealth tax, and there is no tax on its appreciation as well. Put all these together, it makes sense that the additional excess gold stock you may have, jewelry you may have, you may want to put it into the gold monetization scheme, right? Hopefully, simultaneously, RBI promotes these GMS accounts as well, right? And lastly, if you have faith in money today, paper currency, in fact, now we have faith in the electronic currency also, right? To start with, yeah, so Abhay, I have five more minutes, I suppose. I'll take 5 more minutes, right?
Sure.
So therefore, if we have faith in the monetary system today, paper currency, we believe today paper currency is not backed 100% by gold, but still we use it, right? We have faith in the banking system. Similarly, you can have faith in the gold system as well. If you have gold monetary scheme in place, and if you put your gold in the bank accounts, you can have what is called as gilt age deposits. So that paper you carry with you, that's your excess gold, right? And one can develop a faith in that system itself. Right? So how do you channel? What do you do with this gold? The next question is that if banks have this excess gold, let's say it succeeds, what do you banks do with it? Banks don't want to keep idle gold, right? They are in the business of making profits. The catch is that this gold that the banks will get can be given as a working capital loan to jewelers. There's a huge demand for gold in India. 900 tons is imported. Why it is being imported? Because jewelers' demand is there. Why jewelers' demand? Because they want to make more jewelry items, right? So this excess stock of gold can be now, which is coming through the gold monetization scheme, banks can give as a working loan to the jewelers, and as a result, jewelers' demand for gold will go down, and therefore our imports will go down, right? So that's a big advantage of that. And secondly, gold exports can be promoted. Gold jewelry can be exported. When I say that 900 tons of gold is imported, value is 2.5 trillion rupees, about 1/3 of it, 0.7 trillion, we are exporting in the form of jewelry. So if we can't prevent imports, at least promote exports of gold jewelry. So you get gold nuggets, but you export gold jewelry. That is what Southeast Asia has been doing. The tiger economies, they got raw material, exported textiles. Similarly, we can get raw gold and export, right? So that's a possibility. Finally, keeping inflation low is the biggest challenge. If you don't have inflation, probably people will not hold gold. As long as last 40 years data I gave you, as long as inflation is there, people would like to hold gold. In US, they don't hold gold because inflation rate is not very high, right? So therefore, this comes to RBI's policy. Keeping inflation rate very low would certainly encourage people to go away from holding gold, right? And there are other instruments to increase the liquidity. I will not spend time on this. I'll just stop with a postscript. I see a great prospect of having the largest gold museum in India. Today, Museo del Oro in Bogota, Colombia claims to have the largest gold museum. And they are depicting pre-Columbian gold artifacts on display. Probably that should be done in India. We have history of more than 5,000 years and Padmanabha temple. And so many Indian artifacts could be there everywhere if the gold monetization scheme succeeds, right? Most of the generic items can go as gold deposits, but those that are special items, I think they could be collected, and there could be a possibility of a gold museum in India. I'm sure people will come, and it also serves the jewelry exports idea. It will be advertisement for our jewelry exports, right? Maybe RBI or Indian Bullion and Jewelry Association or Gems and Jewelry Export Promotion Council. And maybe something else, somebody else is also watching. There's a famous quote, right? Somebody hai to mumkin hai. So if somebody is watching this, maybe a gold museum, if not the tallest statue in India or in the world, maybe biggest gold museum can also come and serve other purposes as well. Okay, so I think I'll stop here. Thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very very much, sir. I would like to introduce Dr. Sangeeta Kale, who has just joined us. She's the moderator for this program.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you, Abhay. Very nice. I was listening to the talk. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it started. Thanks, Abhay, for doing it. And it was a very lovely talk, Dr. Devdar. It was nice to see the way in which entire journey of so-called gold in Indian market you have covered. It is also nice to see the way in which you've given the options, the way in which gold economy can roll over, different ways in which it can be handled. Thank you for a very good talk. I myself have a few questions. However, there are some questions in the question box. I'll ask them one by one.
Yeah.
So the first question is by Pradeep Singh. He's saying that lot of home hoarded gold happens to be inherited and not declared. Should we not be developing some arrangement so that it can be officially declared to IT authorities? This question is asking from France, actually.
Okay, right. No, I think in the past also gold bonds were issued by Government of India, and I understand at that time also there was no requirement that you declare where did you get it from, right? And that was the whole idea of rechanneling the gold. In gold monetization scheme as well, I think I cannot say with 100% certainty, but you will not be asked about the source of the gold. So gold monetary scheme, otherwise it will not, they are giving you only 2.5% interest. Who will go and therefore deposit your gold with gold in the GMS scheme, right? So the whole idea is that you want to bring out that gold. If not all 10 items you are storing at home, at least 5 of them if you bring it out, right? So I think this is one of the ways to bring the inherited gold into official channels.
Yeah. The next question is by Mr. Chintamani Damle. Very good presentation with lot of explanatory examples. 2 points from my side. Had read that Shivaji Maharaj had minted Suvarna Hone. Is it correct? And second point is that you mentioned about ants, Alexander's deputy, famous Megasthenian, has written in his Indica book that India has gold mining ants.
Right.
Any comments on this? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, those are, comments. So yeah, you're right. Shivaji had gold horn that was minted when he was coronated. And he also had the horns which were not of gold, that they were used for smaller denominations. And Suvarna horns were also made there. And Raja Shiva Chhatrapati is written on top of it. If you want to learn more of it, I have written a book called Economics. I'm not a marketing professor. I wrote a book called Economic Sutra, published by a Random House, Penguin Random House. You will find that coin on the front cover jacket of my book. So you can check Economic Sutra book. And you are right. So yeah, I'm sure till Alexander's time also or later, Pipilika gold was probably available, right? Even up until that time. So thanks for that comment. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is by Harshal Chitale. Can you comment on what incentives central banks, particularly the Federal Reserve, have on maintaining a low or high value of gold? Incentives.
Yeah, good question. I think now that importance has gone down. Till 1971, as you would know, that dollar was was backed by gold, right? President Nixon, he delinked gold from dollar, and even in today in India, the amount of money supply is not related to the amount of gold RBI has. Now what we have is the minimum reserve system, as against the stock of 200 crores worth of foreign exchange and gold. Any amount of money can be printed today in India. But of course, when I say any amount can be printed, what I'm saying is there is no relation to the amount of value of gold that is there with the Reserve Bank of India, right? It is more because of the prudence of the monetary policy, the prudence of the Reserve Bank of India, that we don't keep just producing too much paper currency, right? But today, therefore, since currency or the money supply is delinked from value of gold, right? It is more as a source of reserves for the central government. So today we have close to $600 billion of foreign reserves. Part of it will be in gold as well. That is as a security for the rainy day. If war breaks out in Ukraine and what, if we are unable to pay for our imports, oil prices go up, we will be able to pay through the foreign exchange or the value of gold. So to that extent, higher value of gold helps at that point in time. But if you are asking about, since you are about Federal Reserve, that means in Indian case, you are talking about Reserve Bank of India. There is no linking of now money supply and gold as such, because now we have minimum reserve system, and maybe governments will have more value to it for the rainy day. So in terms of foreign exchange reserves and gold reserves.
Any idea of promoting gold bond? Will fiscal incentives like tax reduction, wealth tax exemption on par with bank deposit, etc., can that help? And your observation that ultimately gold imports can come down through gold deposit bonds is worth considering. That's a comment, but he's asking, it's by Uday Chittale.
Right. So for some reason, I don't know, earlier I think not just in 2015-16 when GMS scheme came, prior to that, almost a decade ago, gold bonds were also issued, if I'm not mistaken, but they didn't succeed. But if you give appreciation of gold bonds, if there is a tax exemption, certainly that will also work. And already now Gift City has the gold exchange in Gandhinagar, and there are other now liquidity measures available in the market, instruments available. For all of them, you'll have to choose whether you give that exemption to gold bonds or other gilt-edged securities. But that can be certainly tried. But at this time, at the retail level, if gold monetization scheme is done, probably banks will be able to use that gold and give it as a working capital to jewelers, and probably that direct link will be much better than the other one.
One quick question even I had that is related to the diamond market, which is also coming up in parallel. And if we consider the way in which history of Indian market goes, now we see diamond much more in the market as compared to what we had earlier. So do you have any comment on the way in which gold market will be affected because of this particular change in the middle class society mostly?
No, I think they are not necessarily substitute goods. They are, to me, they are complementary goods. You need diamond studded ring. So that means you need gold and you need diamond, right?
Yes.
So therefore, they are more of complementary goods, I would think. And that's true for export of jewelry also. If you look at the data on export of jewelry, there is plain gold jewelry, then there is studded gold jewelry. So they go hand in hand. And that's true in the domestic market as well. And now that we are the fastest growing economy in the world today. So therefore, certainly increase in demand for diamonds or gold, we will have to live with it. And the only thing we are saying is that how we should rechannel it so that we don't import too much. That's the
yeah. And this yes, yes, Abhay.
One question for Professor Devdar. Sir, you mentioned of these enormous gold reserves with the Padmanabhan temple, with other temples like Tirupati, Siddhi Vinayak, Sai Baba temple.
Yeah.
Now, is there any way in which the government can encourage these temples to deposit a small portion of their reserves?
That's a very important question and very tricky question also, because touching, there was some inventory done, right, recently of Padmanabha Swami temple. And I think the trusts that which run those temples are little wary of, losing that gold or whatever, right? And, but I think certainly if they are in the present dispensation, maybe it's more favorable to building temples and rejuvenating temples, right? So if they have more faith in the current government, I think if the inventory is done and if there are same generic 2, 3, 4, 5 items, at least one can be given out for the museum. That's the idea. Rest can stay with them, right? So, but I think it's more matter of a trust between government and the temples. The thing is that what has happened in India is that this is a little aside comment, but the minority institutions, minority religions can have their own religious institutions, right? Places of worship, and those are private trusts. But in India, for Hindu temples, what has happened is these are government trusts, and they are therefore those who run the temples always feel that government may swindle everything away. So therefore, there is a more mistrust in the majority community trusts than the minority community trusts, because those are private trusts. So I think if that trust develops, they may be able to do the inventory and part with some of those. Otherwise, it would be a wonderful idea to have a largest gold museum, and we have more to offer than anybody else, I suppose.
Yeah. One last question. We are actually running out of time. So our last question, this is by Vilas Patre. In your opinion, he asks, why the banks have been so disinterested in any gold collection schemes?
Yeah, so good question. I think it was not marketed well. And, because in the South, gold loans are so popular. That means banks are associated with getting loans, getting gold from the households and giving them loan, right? So therefore, that channel could have been properly exploited, right? Once somebody takes gold loan, that means they are ready to part with their gold and keep with the bank. Now, after you have returned the loan, if you have developed a trust with the bank, now that could have continued. So there should have been the synergy between gold loan market and the gold monetization scheme, right? And I think it has not been popularized. Whether there is no appreciation, capital appreciation tax, there is no interest tax, there is no valuation wealth tax, plus 2.5% you are earning, plus you are not paying on the locker, plus there is a safety, and you have excess gold in stocks anyway. I think this was not marketed well. If there is will, then this can be properly managed. And I mentioned about rural area. They didn't go to rural areas, right? That's where the small deposits will be there, but the volume in total will be much larger. So you need that extension activity, which has not happened yet.
Yes. Any question from any panel member? Any comments from any panel members? If not, then I think I'll thank the speaker. Thank you, Professor Satish Devdar, for a very, very good talk, an interesting topic, and it was nice to go through the journey of gold in some sense. So, yes.
I want to give one comment, if I may, because first I want to thank Professor Devdar for a really brilliant lecture. When Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, we had proposed a gold certificate scheme. I don't know whether you remember. This was announced in budget of 1990. And RB was made in charge of running it. It didn't work out well, because I think one of the reasons, maybe many reasons, one of the reasons that the transaction costs are very high, and banks were not given adequate incentives to do this. So banks initially the transaction costs high for banks. And I remember that was one of the reasons why we didn't succeed. And then, of course, we didn't, this is my recollection. So you may wish to look at that time, because it was, actually it was simplified because it was not a physical, it was certificates. It was called gold certificates.
Okay.
And it was a 99 budget. So maybe you have to look at it.
Sure.
And my recollection that one of the reasons that it didn't succeed because of high transaction costs for the banks.
Okay.
And they didn't have adequate incentives.
Okay. So yeah, something can be looked at because.
But really, I want to thank you.
Yeah.
Have a look at it. Have a look at it.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Yeah, thanks for giving me this opportunity. My pleasure, really.
Thanks a lot, Professor Satish Devdar. And thank you everybody for attending this session. Thank you, Kerkar sir, for also being on the panel. And let me thank everybody who attended this talk. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
We would just like to mention our next program. So this is a book discussion webinar on Dr. Naushad Forbes' book, The Struggle and the Promise, Restoring India's Potential. And the speakers are Professor Ajay Shah, Dr. V. Premnath, Dr. Vijay Kelkar will be in the chair. And this event is on 27th May from 6 p.m. to 7:15 p.m. You will find the link on our website. All the members will get the link. Yes, sir.
Abhay, I want to also mention one point. When you introduced Professor Satish Devdar, I wanted to add that he has written 3 policy papers for PIC. Yeah? One on Make in India and 2 on farm laws. And very, very important policy papers. I just mentioned to our audience that they're very important policy papers were written by Professor Devdar.
Thank you.
Papers are available on our website. They can be accessed there. And finally, we would like to thank our backend team, Kiran Pardeshi and Deepak Dhanwe, for helping us organize this program. Thank you very much, Dr. Devdar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our participants and the questions that came in enriching this discussion. Thank you, Dr. for joining in.
Thank you.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye-bye.